I need NOS.
Why the hell would anyone put nitrous on a 150cc GY6 scooter? Well, because it looks cool as shit, is why. I'm going to do this video a bit different. I'm going to go and show you the results of the nitrous. Kind of a before and after, or a side-by-side comparison with and without nitrous. And mostly just for G-Whiz factor for most people watching the video. But the few of you that want to do nitrous, I'm going to keep on going with the video on how to do it. There's a lot of stuff you have to know to do nitrous. To do it safely and do it accurately. It's not just a simple plug-and-play thing. It has to be tuned and everything else. If you follow how I do things, I see what RPM I'm at. If I'm running 9,000 RPM, then I gear the bike up. Then, if I can't make 9,000 RPM, I do power mods till I can. So, my last thing I did was the 171 kit. I was making 9,000 RPM. I geared the bike up with the rear end gear kit, and that put me back down to 8,000 RPM. My plan now is to use nitrous to get me back to 9,000 RPM and more top speed. This thing just kept on going on the spray. I think it would have went 80 or more. Looked like I was hitting 9,000 RPM, so I backed off because I don't want to go over 9 grand shooting nitrous in there. Who the hell knows what'll happen? But yeah, epic. All right, that mod is super cool. Not only does it just add shit tons of cool points, but it's super fun. I just can't get enough of pressing that red button. Holy crap. It's really awesome. And yeah, so it worked out pretty good using the whippet there. And this is a long video to follow. It should be a mini series on Netflix, but there's just so much shit to cover when you're putting on nitrous. How to install it, how to not blow your motor up, how to tune it, and all the things involved. It's just a long video. So yeah, you can laugh along with me at the comments if everyone tell me I'm gonna blow my motor up. Mostly the people that comment like that didn't watch the video. But if I do blow it up, who the hell cares? I'll put a 232 in there, make another video. That's just too freaking fun. The big fear on nitrous is you're gonna blow your motorcycle up or whatever. And there's some truth in that. But we have to understand what nitrous is first before we install it. The laughing gas, nitro, NOS, whatever you may call it, NOx, it's all the same stuff. It's technically N2O, dinitrogen oxide. It's a plenty safe substance. It's the same stuff that's in the air we breathe, nitrogen and oxygen. Contrary to popular belief, nitrous is not flammable. It's just like oxygen. It's an oxidizer or an accelerant to a fuel. Oxygen causes fuel, or whatever it's burning, to burn hotter and faster and requires more fuel when it's burning. Let's go back to class here. Just like in your OSHA training, you have the fire triangle. You need 3 things to create fire. You need heat, you need fuel, and you need oxygen. You take away one of those things, the fire goes away. So the oxygen is just an accelerant or an oxidizer for that fuel, is to allow it to burn better and hotter. But the big fear behind using nitrous is we're going to blow our motor up. And to address that situation, you really have to understand what blows a motor up, what that actually means. And to understand that, you have to understand what detonation is. Detonation is what kills your motor. All right, the piston pulls down and sucks in an air-fuel mixture. Then it pushes back up for the compression stroke, and a spark should happen right at the top there. That spark plug is going to ignite the fuel air mixture. It's going to blow it up and push that piston back down with a lot of force. That force they refer to as head pressure. The more fuel and air you put in here, the higher the head pressure. The more force you're going to push that down with. The spark plug has to be timed perfectly to explode that just as the piston's heading downwards. And that's done through ignition timing, a pickup sensor on the stator that tells a spark when to happen, but it actually doesn't tell the spark. That goes into your CDI. Someone that made that CDI has mapped it, we'll say, of timing curve of degrees before and after top dead center of where that spark's going to happen. So what that means is a little bit before that piston reaches top dead center, maybe right in here, is told to spark. Because the engine's rotating and it's hard to time this, if you want to get this thing nailed right at top dead center when it's going to make the downstroke and all that pressure is going to push the piston rod down, you've got to kind of tell it a little bit early to spark. And by the time it sparks, it nails it right at the perfect place. The faster this engine goes, the more early you have to tell it to spark. So a typical car might run at 10 degrees before top dead center for the ignition spark. As you accelerate, either it has a vacuum advance or an electronic ignition advance, and it's going to advance it to around 30, 34 degrees, somewhere in there. And you're actually going to tell that thing to spark at 34 degrees before top dead center, even into here somewhere, while that piston's on the way up. Because the piston's going so fast, by the time it gets there, that spark will happen at the perfect timing. If that spark happens before this piston gets to top dead center, if it actually sparks and ignites that fuel mixture, it's going to try to blow the piston back down the wrong way. It's going to work against the rotation of the engine. And that's detonation. And detonation is same as knocking or pinging or something like that. It's a very metallic sound. It's very bad for the engines. It damages pistons, it damages spark plugs, it damages valves, things like that. When you start increasing this head pressure with more fire, more oxygen, more fuel, the damage gets even more significant. You can bend these crank rods, you can blow holes in your pistons, you can do all sorts of damage if you have enough head pressure. That's why you see guys running forged pistons in high compression or blower situations where they have superchargers, blowers. They'll put a forged piston in there to keep that piston from cracking. But if you can get that spark to happen just as that piston rolls across top dead center, it pushes the crankshaft down in the proper direction, and it's a very smooth operating engine. No pinging, no knocking, no anything like that. Now the primary cause of detonation is heat. What happens is, we'll back this up here, this head and everything in it is hot from the engine running. The piston's hot, the valves are hot, the spark plug's hot. If it gets hot enough, it'll light this fuel mixture before the spark plug fires. So we could be back in here, right about here. The piston's on its way up, fires right there. It touches these hot surfaces, it ignites, and it prematurely detonates. And that's caused by heat. And it blows the piston back down the opposite direction, damaging your engine. Now heat is usually caused by a lean condition. And what causes something to go lean is when you start adding superchargers. Superchargers add more O2, but they haven't added any fuel. You get a hotter burn, you get a faster burn, but you don't have the fuel to cool it, and you're going to end up with detonation. When I say supercharger, I'm talking about mechanical forced air induction, and that's your Roots chargers, or maybe your Vortex superchargers, even a turbocharger, something that forces more air into the intake. And the air that we're forcing in there has 21% oxygen in it. So if you look at what's in air that we breathe, same thing, nitrogen, miscellaneous stuff, about 70-something% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. But nitrogen oxide, or NOS, is also a supercharger. It's a chemical supercharger. It's chemically giving you more oxygen with that air mixture. And if you look at the chemical makeup of nitrogen oxide, it's better than air we breathe. It's 36% O2. So you're going to get a lot more heat, and a lot more burn. The advantage of the nitrogen oxide, at about 500 degrees, the O2 and the nitrogen atoms separate. And when those atoms separate, the nitrogen acts as a coolant. So if you think about your superchargers, they have intercoolers. Your turbochargers, they have intercoolers. You're trying to control that heat that you're producing inside that combustion chamber. The beauty of nitro is that we really don't need the intercooler because the released nitrogen is cooling the combustion chamber. So the heat that we're going to have comes from a lean condition, a lack of fuel. That's why it's so important to add fuel and not run a dry system. So the things we do to prevent detonation are we add more fuel. More fuel, more power. If you just run nitrous oxide in your engine without adding more fuel, you're not going to get more power. The O2 doesn't burn and make more power. It just causes the fuel that's in there to burn quicker and hotter. You're just going to get more heat. So why do they make a dry system? Well, they make a dry system for these cars that have electronic fuel ignition or aftermarket cars that you can control the fuel with. You've got your laptop computer in there, like on Fast and Furious. You're controlling how much fuel goes in there so you can run a dry system because your injectors are going to make up for it. Another trick you can do is use colder plugs. They recommend when you run nitrous to run a colder plug, 2 levels colder. The other thing you do is you retard the timing. Remember we talked about shooting that spark to try to time it exactly with this, hitting it before top dead center. Well, just to play it safe, why not run that spark after top dead center? And then we know for sure it's going to blow up on the downstroke. And that's what we can do. We can actually, what's called retard the timing. It's not quite as efficient, but we're going to ensure we safely explode it in the right place. The problem is that we can't control that. That little CDI box is controlling our timing curve. The recommended amount is 1 to 2 degrees, not that much. So to control detonation, we're going to add fuel, and then the other thing we can do is use a higher octane fuel. People think high octane fuel, oh, it explodes better. High octane fuel is harder to light on fire. So the higher octane fuel you run, the less likely that mixture will explode before it's supposed to. It can get hotter before it detonates. So next let's talk about where to press that red button. We want to have a cool red button so we hit the nitrous button like you see in the movies. Look at a Honda Grom. That's pretty close to our GY6. Not like looks like 8 or 9 horsepower, 8 foot-pounds of torque. So the torque curve in blue peaks around 8 and then drops off significantly around 5,500 RPM. The horsepower curve keeps going. As you know, all curves pass at 52. This horsepower is just a mathematical derivative of the torque and RPM. So the horsepower really doesn't matter. It could keep on going to 1,000, wouldn't matter. The engine knows torque. We want to assume that these Chinese engines we have, they can't handle much more torque than they were designed for. We will know they were designed for 8 if we're getting to 8 right here. So we figure the engine can handle 8. We don't want to give it a lot more torque than that and not damage our engines or put too much stress on it. Is to try and not exceed this number right here, 8. And it's like, well, how are we going to make more power if we don't exceed the torque that we're already given? Well, look how the torque drops off right here. From 5,500 to about 9,000, it drops significantly. So what we're going to do is we're going to press our red button somewhere around 6. Now it's going to give us more torque, but it shouldn't bring it up above 8. As the torque starts coming up, we introduce the nitrous, torque starts coming up. Now the RPM's at 7 grand. And we're going to try to hold that torque right up here at that 8 mark, all the way through here to 9,000 RPM. You can see right here at 8,000 RPM, we're putting out almost 9 horsepower. Well, if we can take this blue line and move it up. We'll get it up here to hopefully around 8 foot-pounds of torque at 8,000 RPM. Then this red line is going to move up to maybe 10, 11, 12 horsepower. So that's the goal. So I'm going to press my button around 6,000, 6,500, somewhere in here. That's where the red button's going to come on. And I'm going to try to build torque without exceeding what I think they've manufactured this thing to handle. It's not good to run this nitrous in a lugged down engine. You don't want to run nitrous below 3,000 RPM. That's like the golden rule. These engines, they really aren't going until about 3,000 or 4,000 RPM. So I don't think we need a window switch. We don't have the ability to put one on here anyway, because we can't program our ECUs. But we're pretty safe, since these things aren't even really going until about 4,000 RPM. And there's also the cardinal rule: you only use nitrous at wide open throttle. So if you're wide open throttle on this and you're rolling down the road, you're definitely at 4,000 RPM. So I think we can get away with not putting the window switch on it. Now the wide open throttle switch, that's another tough one on this bike, because we've got a PWK carburetor. So we've got a plan to make our Maddog's nitrous powered. Let's see, motorcycle nitrous system, because we only need one injector. We don't, most of these things come with multiple injectors. We only need one. 4-cylinder single cylinder nitrous system. That's for us. Let's buy some parts. So here's the system we need. It's a good system. It's got the bottle, hoses. Geez, $969. Yeah, I don't think I can afford that. That's like some Dorby Works action right there. I'm thinking we need to ghetto wrench this system. Maybe eBay has some cheaper kits. Here's nitrous oxide motorcycle kit. I can tell you right away, this is not going to work. That's a dry kit. 1 solenoid. That's only nitrous going into our system. 245 bucks. We're going to have to add a lot to that. No purge valve, so no cool looks. We got to add that. And I'm surprised they sell that for a motorcycle. That's a good way to burn your engine up, remember, like we talked about. 50 horsepower. Aha, this kit uses your bike's EFI air temp sensor to meter the air temp, and the computer will add the additional fuel needed to make the extra horsepower, because remember, you can't make horsepower without adding fuel. And so we don't have that. We can't use this kit. That'd be motorcycle wet system. This looks like it would do pretty good. It's got the single injector. It's got both the solenoid valves, fuel pump. It's got your master on-off switch. It's got the relay here and the harness. Yeah, this here, $465.95. That's not bad. Here's a cool one. Go-kart motorcycle. Looks like they're using little N2O bottles. Those are whippets. This is what you use to make whipped cream, or you need to sniff at parties and laughing gas. That's pretty cool. 98 bucks. It's a completely dry system. Not much volume there. I don't know if we'd even fill it on a GY6. And we're not adding more fuel, so it's not gonna really give us more power. But it does bring up a good idea. Why not use a whippet? It's pure nitrous oxide. Yeah. Why don't they make bigger bottles of that stuff? So these nitrous tanks are probably one of the most expensive parts of the kit, that and the solenoids. They're anywhere from $200 to $300. They're all pretty big, but you have to go get them filled. Your welding shops won't fill them for you. They'll just sell you a big tank of nitrous. Then you have to buy the mother station to fill your own nitrous. So the only way to get your nitrous filled is to go to a speed shop if they fill nitrous.
Like the sign says, speed's just a question of money.
And the closest one I could find was like 90 miles away. But it gave me the idea of using this whipped cream charger. So I always thought this stuff was whipped cream, but it's not. It's pure nitrous oxide. It's food grade nitrous oxide. So you have automotive grade, and they put like a chemical in it so you won't sniff it. Makes it make it smell bad or taste bad. Then you have food grade, which is odorless. And then you have medical grade nitrous oxide that the dentists use. And they're all the same. So this is a pure nitrous oxide. A lot of different bottle sizes, which is cool. I ordered the smallest one they have, but they have a threaded tip on them. The tip, it's got a push down thing, kind of like a Schrader valve, and the nitrous oxide comes out. So I also ordered a regulator for it. I figure for the GY6, I don't need the 900 PSI shooting into my... So I can adjust the pressure that this nitrous is going into the intake. And I think you'll be able to tune it like that. But the good thing about these are they come filled. They're ready to use. So no hassle of trying to find them, you know, a filling station, speed shop or whatever, and putting up with all that BS. You just should be able to use it right out of the box. We're going to have our bottle. It's going to go through a line to the solenoid. That's your nitrous. From the solenoid, it's going to go into one side of the fogger, and that's it. On the fuel side, if you've already got the electric fuel pump, the ghetto wrench fuel pump, you're good to go. If not, you're going to have to add a fuel pump, a little low volume fuel pump. But since I've already got an electric fuel pump, I'm just going to throw a T in my line. It's going to T out. We're going to bring the fuel into one side of the solenoid, and it goes from the fuel solenoid to the fogger also, and mixes with the nitrous, goes into the motor. Doesn't get simpler than that. Let's take a more detailed look at this fogger nozzle. A fuel one and a nitrous one. Then those run in to this nozzle here. This nozzle goes in your intake manifold between the carb and the engine, and sprays fuel and nitrous in. These are your jets right here. This looks like a regular fitting, like a 1/8 NPT fitting. What these jets do is turn the top of this threaded area into a AN fitting. So it'll now become an AN3 or 3AN. So these hoses would be 3AN here, and then 3AN here, and then you would have an adapter that does 1/8 NPT to 3AN. The electrical portion is just as simple. We're gonna go from the battery. We want to turn these solenoids on. We're going to run them through an arming switch. You're on-off for the whole system. Then once that switch is on, it's going to send power through the solenoid, but in between we're going to have the red button that we press. So there's our activation button, and we hit that, it connects a circuit. If you notice, the power doesn't go right to the solenoids, it goes to a relay. And why that is, and when you put that much pressure on a solenoid, it's hard to open and close it. These are high amp solenoids. You can't just run them off this wire from the battery. You'll melt that wire. It doesn't have the power. So what we do is we run the wire into a relay. What a relay does is a relay brings a big fat wire from the battery into it. Then it takes the big fat wire from the relay to the solenoids to open it. When you press this red button on your skinny wire, that skinny wire goes to the relay and just tells the relay to complete the circuit between the battery and between the solenoids, and it sends power to the solenoids instantaneously. So you're pressing the button, you're activating the relay is doing the work. The nitrous tank is at about 900 psi. I'm going to get solenoids that hold 8 psi. That's like thousands of psi. So as far as how safe this is to use on the bike, it's fairly safe. You have to be realistic with your power expectations. Any power adder is going to add wear and tear beyond normal. Try not to exceed 25 horsepower per liter, and you shouldn't damage your motor. So if you're vanilla ice rolling down a beachfront avenue, A1A, and your 5.0 ragtop, you've got a 5-liter motor, so 25 horsepower per liter, you're looking at 125 horsepower shot. Should keep you safe in that Mustang without damaging the engine too much. Obviously you're going to shorten the engine life just because you're using it harder, but it should be pretty reliable. Now these things are 150 cc. That's 0.15 liters. So mathematically, we should be looking to get around 3.75 horsepower for our safe horsepower shot. It doesn't sound like much, but you got to figure these are 8 horsepower motors. We need to do a size calculator on these jets to get something that little. And online they do have size calculators so you can tell what jet size you need. And if I'm only trying to get 4 horsepower or less, I'm talking about a 10,000th jet in there. And then the fuel jet is usually about 85% of that. So I'll probably be using a jet that's a 0.010 and a fuel jet of 0.009. I don't think they get smaller than that unless you drill your own. Got the regulator. It's a pretty tough one to solve. So this is M11 times 1, so 11 millimeters, 1 millimeter thread pitch. This is a blow-off valve or an overpressure valve. I put it on the bottle. It turns out these things are about 900 psi, just like a regular nitrous bottle. And it's got a regulator that allows you to turn this and bring it from, should be nothing, to about 300 psi. I'm thinking with the GY6, we don't need a 900 psi going into it. We can adjust how much nitrous we get with this regulator, which is a good deal because it's a pretty small engine. So if I can adjust it down, maybe I'll start out trying like 100 psi, then go up and try to tune it like that. I don't think I need this other regulator. It's just getting too big and bulky. So I'm going to take that off. Everything on here is 1/8 NPT. So 1/8 NPT plug will go in here. We'll make a little smaller unit. This thing here is impossible to find. This is M22 times 2.0. It can't be found. So that's a quick disconnect fitting. It's kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of this hose altogether. So I'll get a adapter that goes 1/8 NPT to AN3 or 3AN fittings. So you put your adapter in here. I'll have my plug in here. And then I'll take my steel braided hose. It looks cool. And that'll be a 3AN fitting on there. When you're putting fittings in for O2 and I guess nitrous also, remember that fire triangle. Grease is a fuel. So you don't use grease. You don't use a lot of thread sealers. They recommend Loctite, red Loctite actually. I'm going to use blue, a little bit weaker. Any Loctite that dries hard and won't become a fuel. And that's just for the 1/8 inch NPT fittings for the Loctite sealer. The AN3 fittings, or any of your AN fittings, are self-sealing. Okay, my keyed on 12 volt DC comes out of here and down into this switch. I'll put a switch in here. This will be a master switch, turns the whole system on and off. From that switch, it'll send 12 volt DC to this button. The other side of this wire will go to the back where the solenoids are and turn the solenoids on and off. NOS switch, momentary. And I like these switches a lot because they replace your thing that was already on there, so you don't eat up a bunch of handlebar room. This 375 gram bottle, and that's about the perfect size. I really couldn't find anywhere to mount it. I guess I'm going to put it right here on the side. I'm using a fire extinguisher mount for like a race car. This nozzle is 1/16 NPT. I think I've seen 1/8 ones also. That'd be pretty big, because this one's pretty big. So the tap is hard to find. I'd probably order that online. There is a secondary option of just sticking this nozzle through a hole in the boot, but there's not a lot of room between the carb and the intake manifold. So, and I also, those little lines, those AN lines, they pull pretty tight. They're hard to bend. So I didn't know if that would just pull it out or make it go sideways. So I figured I would tap this hole in my intake manifold and run it in that way. And you end up with this situation right here. It should be able to suck the fuel and the nitrous right into the intake. All right, let's cover the system electrically. I've got a wire coming in from the 12 volt keyed on black wire going to this master switch here. That just turns the system on, arms it. The wire then goes to the red button for nitrous, and then back down through here, and it comes out right here. It's this thin wire. That wire goes into the relay. I've got a big wire coming off the battery, same routing, and it comes out here. I just made it black so it matches the bike, and it turns into the big wire going into the relay. My 2 solenoids also go into the relay. On the fuel side, I've got the Rollin' Wrench fuel pump already installed, so I'm going to try to use that. Goes into the carburetor here, and then the T right here sends fuel into this solenoid. From the fuel solenoid, it takes an AN3 line and goes into the fogger. On the nitrous side, I've got the Whippet bottle into the regulator. From the regulator, AN3 line again, all the way to the nitrous solenoid. From the nitrous solenoid, AN3 line into the nitrous side of the fogger. That's it. Did you hear about the cowboy that couldn't spell? He woke up with a bad hangover in a warehouse. There, laughing gas is definitely not leaking. First tune it by leading with fuel and then adding nitrous later. So I got the bottle completely off. But I'm going to turn the system on. I'm going to treat it like I have nitrous. And at 6,500 RPM I want to hit my red button. And I should get fuel only and the bike should bog out. When I calculated my jetting, I calculated it for the horsepower I wanted. 4 horsepower we'll say, but I calculated it based on nitrous coming in at 900 psi. It's like a car system. And I think fuel coming in at maybe 20 psi, something a lot higher than this rolling wrench pump. This rolling wrench pump, I don't know if it even puts out 1 psi. It's real weak, so if I want to keep it, I've got it turned up all the way. So I'm just going to start drilling out this jet and get more fuel volume in there. I don't think I'm going to get any spray with this kind of pump, but I think the air is going through the manifold quick enough that it'll grab the fuel and take it in there. So we're going to start drilling this out till we pass our bog test. Once we pass our bog test, we'll introduce nitrous. They make these little teeny drill bits for people that do craft work, like jewelry work. They're tiny, they fit in your Dremel. So I use those to drill out jets. The bog test. All right, another bog test. That run I could really feel the nitrous start to come in, and I actually could feel a difference. I went up 2 drill bit sizes on my jet, so I have no idea what jet size I'm running. I'm just drilling them up, and I'm gonna go 1 more on the fuel, and I'm probably gonna go 2 more on the nitrous, and we'll see how that works. If I were to do this again, I would just buy a kit, like the Cold Fusion kit, without the nitrous bottle. I think it'd be cheaper. I've spent a lot more than this price here on this. I bought a lot of parts that didn't work or that failed. If you get cheap solenoids, the pressure from the nitrous pushes them open. Maybe 100 psi, they just push open. Nitrous just leaks out. If you get cheap fuel solenoids, they'll stop working on you, and you don't get any fuel. That's a good way to destroy your engine. So I got the lowest quality solenoids I could find, but I think I'm at a price now where I would have been better off to buy the kit. But that's how you learn. So if you don't have this fuel pump, like a electric fuel pump, you're gonna have to run a fuel pump in here like this. I'd probably get a, I think this is 6 to 9 PSI. It's more PSI than would be required, but I think 6 to 9 PSI is a good fuel pump for the Nitrous. And I would do the same T thing, and I would run about the 9 PSI into the Nitrous solenoid so it sprays correctly. And then I would run a fuel pressure regulator into the carburetor like this and set that at about 2 PSI. So that's how the system would look if you don't have a fuel pump already.